Good. All right. Well, we want to be very interactive in this session, and so we're going to have the opportunity to hear from our panelists, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So I hope that you all are looking forward to having a good dialogue around workforce development in that. So I do want to welcome you to this session, which is on workforce development in water and food, and really thinking about preparing that next generation. So if I haven't had a chance to meet you, my name is Tiffany Hang-Moss, and I serve as Dean for the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I will be facilitating our discussion today. And again, as we've talked about throughout this conference, global water and food systems face significant challenges, from climate change, population growth, to resource scarcity and food insecurity. And so addressing these challenges is going to take a talented workforce, and that's here what we're going to focus on today. And so we're very fortunate to have an amazing panel of experts that are here, really forward-looking in how they think about workforce development in that. And so I want to take just a moment to introduce you to our panelists. So first we have Demetrius Bledsoe, and Demetrius is a dynamic leader in sustainable agriculture and workforce development. He is the CEO of Fresh Harvest 365 and Fresh Hire 365, and through these platforms, I have experienced it firsthand. He truly is at the forefront of innovative solutions that bridge gaps between agricultural needs and workforce readiness. Our second panelist is Bree Hutchcraft-May, and Bree is a seasoned professional with a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture from Illinois State University and has 19 years of experience in research administration. Since 2013, she has excelled as an Alliance Development Manager at Bayer Crop Science, where she leads a team dedicated to supporting that research and development platform for Bayer. Next, we have Drew Golson, and Drew is an extension irrigation specialist and serves as the coordinator for the National Center for Aquifer Research with Mississippi University State, which is located at the Delta Research and Extension Center in Stoneville, Mississippi. So Drew is dedicated to producing and disseminating research aimed at conserving groundwater, ensuring the sustainability of water resources for agriculture. We're also joined by Derek Heron, and he is a professor, irrigation engineer, and he's the associate head for academic programs in the Department of Biological Systems Engineering here at the University of Nebraska. And then he also serves as the education coordinator for irrigation and agricultural water management at the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. He's taught courses on irrigation innovation management. He's the co-author of an open access textbook titled Irrigation Systems Management, and he served as a mentor for 20 graduate students from 9 different countries. And then our final panelist is Dave Lamb, and Dave is a professor in the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at the University of Nebraska, and he works with our Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program, and really thinking about startups that students are generating, startups that they might be launching while they are within our college, and then also best positioning them if after graduation their desire is to launch a business. And through this platform, he and his team has established a startup incubator to give students access to business coaching, resources, time to work on business, and the opportunity to develop a network that allows them to establish a successful future. And as dean of the college that this entrepreneurship platform falls underneath of, their goal always is that students are so successful that they launch a business before they graduate, and they go off and they have this successful business. My goal is that they graduate and they launch a successful business. But what I hope that you see with the composition of this panel, and I really do want to give a shout out to Tala Awada, who's in the back here. She's really helped to bring this all together. But we wanted a flavor of individuals that are really leaning in on that entrepreneurship side of things. We wanted a perspective from industry also. portfolio and what they're looking for. And then we have a couple of our experts in the area, really, as we lean in on agricultural systems and irrigation in that. So I think we've got a great combination of panelists here that will help us dig deep into how we think about workforce development for the future. So to start this discussion, each of our panelists is going to give a quick overview related to their portfolio, and then after that, we'll lead in with a few overarching questions, and then we will open it up to the audience for a robust Q&A session. Okay, so we're going to kick things off with Demetrius.
Hello, hello. Can everybody hear me? They said we're streaming, so I have to make sure they can hear me online as well. So I'm Demetrius Bledsoe, and want to thank you all for joining us. I'm going to speak about one of the segments that I am truly passionate about, and that's really the impact and how we can influence the next generation of a workforce with the ability of talent, but across the board, how do we really meet them to where they're at? At Fresh Harvest 365, that was the entity that I started to really address food deserts and looking at zip codes. How do we impact zip codes as a whole with the challenges for work skill sets? But not only that, but how do we produce healthy produce in the community? We've established a system that we're able to grow 3 to 5 acres worth of leafy greens and herbs in a system set up that we pretty much place within an urban setting. I like to call it vacancy to value, but we address the challenges, like I mentioned before, when it comes to overall workforce capabilities, but meeting the skill gaps within the community. But what do we see the future skill gaps and needs that are needed to address for the future generation of skill sets in the community overall? And welcome for those that's coming in. One of the things that we talked about next would be, how do we implement our process? Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So we partnered in with local partners in the community. So we looked at the Boys and Girls Club, the Urban League. We looked at vet biz that are key functionals for veterans in the community. We also have partnered in with F.A.R.M, crop sciences on how can we implement a F.A.R.M program, which is called Fostering Agricultural Resilience through Mentorship. But how do we implement this type of program into the communities where we're giving people a foundational set in agricultural? I call it the agripreneurship approach. So I grew up in junior achievement, so I was like, what does it take to create a business leadership type academy program for individuals that want to get into agriculture? I explained to individuals that agriculture as a whole has over 600 plus careers opportunities that we need to really express to the new generation that there's jobs and careers in agriculture besides just working in a cornfield or a cotton field or all that. There's jobs that if you name a career that you possibly would want to go into a non-ag experience or journey, there's jobs in agriculture that can relate to that as well. We can go to the next slide. Another part of our company, as we started out growing into the community and teaching individuals how to grow into the community, I actually started a program called the F.A.R.M, like I mentioned before, which is Fostering Agricultural Resilience through Mentorship. We have different paths in this program, but we've established a national, federally approved Department of Labor apprenticeship program called the Hydroponic Farmer Technician Program that we're able to get certified federally, and we've implemented within this past year. We've enrolled 46 individuals into the program, and with the program, they learn vocational skill sets that would be included in, solar installation, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and all that. What are some of the skill sets that you might need to be a farmer is how we looked at in developing this program. But we also included the holistic approach. I look at OSHA standards you have to be physically able to work. My thought process, what happens to you for individuals that are not mentally ready to work and show up? So we implemented a mental wellness program as well into our holistic approach. And part of our pathway, we can go back one more time, sorry. Part of our pathway is geared towards college students. It's geared towards individuals that are 18 to 24. And we'll also have a pathway for hybrid, those individuals that want to go into a academic aspects of the careers and learnings, but also matching in with vocational skill sets for those that want to go into an apprenticeship, but that might not want to go into a 4-year type of situation overall. We can go to the next. So the F.A.R.M program that we've implemented, we've taken a holistic approach and matched it in with the vocational skill sets that we talked about. So what does it take for an individual to come from an urban setting and go into a rural setting in order to survive and be on a team that they can contribute? And not only be on a team, but they are able to have the skill sets to contribute to that team and not feel like they don't have a backing or a validation to be a part of that team overall. So that's what we kind of foster in, that whole approach. And like I mentioned last year, we started out the F.A.R.M program last year. We entered 46 individuals into the program. We employed 31 of those individuals with F.A.R.M, and as a result, the economic impact that we had in the St. Louis metro community was $1.8 million of economic impact with those individuals. So that is who we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Demetrius. So a few of us from the University of Nebraska had the opportunity to go visit firsthand Demetrius's platform and also connect with F.A.R. And I will just say it's very impressive. It definitely is experiential learning. It's hands-on from that standpoint. It's thinking about the systems perspective, as Demetrius mentioned. And the other thing that I think is incredibly important is it's opening up the space to let all students, all learners know that there's a place for them in agriculture, and particularly leaning in on those urban audiences and that. So next we're going to hear from Bree, and this is a natural transition into Demetrius' platform to what that looks like now in the private sector and when we think about workforce development.
Thank you, Tiffany. So good morning, everyone. I am excited to talk with you all today about F.A.R.'s university mentoring program called Be4U. And so really the mission of this program is to advocate for F.A.R.'s reputation. We want to stay engaged with academics, network to strengthen relationships and trust with individual PIs, labs, and then universities across the agriculture and biotech industry. And so our year-long program adopts a mentee-driven approach to one-on-one mentoring, which is really the heart of the initiative. And so in the program, the mentees are really expected to take control of their professional development. And so that means that each mentoring experience that they have with their mentor is really tailored to those individuals and helps drive those discussions and talk through their aspirations. During these meetings, the mentees are responsible for taking control of the meetings. It's their responsibility to drive those discussions. During these meetings, they'll talk about their professional goals, maybe assess gaps or barriers that they may be experiencing. But we also offer various topics for the mentors and the mentees to discuss together. Some of those topics are industry competencies, self-awareness. We obviously want to talk through their elevator speech and their personal branding. We will do CV, resume, cover letter reviews. And we also provide them with techniques for providing and receiving feedback, because I don't even think the most seasoned professionals are good at providing or receiving feedback, probably myself included. Next, we also offer F.A.R.-led webinars on various growth opportunities throughout the course of the year. And this can be on topics, for instance, last year we had a session on visa challenges for foreign national students, which we received some really positive feedback on. We also offer the Strength Finders and 6 Working Geniuses for mentees and mentors to identify their strengths and their unique contributions. This all really helps develop and and prepare them for industry roles. In addition to the webinars, we also prioritize building relationships and networks. And so in addition to the development sessions, what we also provide is networking opportunities. And so, for example, Bayer will provide on-site visits for universities that have sites close to a Bayer site. So for instance, last year, the University of Nebraska mentees went to our Gothenburg site. It's where they spent the day there, had the opportunity to meet and interact with other Bayer colleagues, and even get to interact more closely with their fellow mentees, who they don't always get to do that with during the school year. So another really important, I think, piece that I find very valuable is really the career advancement advice. There are a lot of mentees who don't really have the essential soft skills that are needed for industry jobs. And so what we do is we try to focus on some of those essential key soft skills. So we'll talk through effective communication, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Leadership, we'll talk through ownership. We'll also growth mindset, problem solving, some of these key essential skills that tend to be a little bit lacking at times. And so we'll work through those with the mentees. We also finally encourage our mentees to build their business acumen and develop relationships with other industry partners. So I like to tell my mentees, you need a board of directors. It's not going to just be me. It's not going to just be your advisor. You need to interact with others. If you've got other relationships that you are finding value in, utilize those individuals, help build that business acumen, because a lot of the mentees that come to apply for roles within Bayer don't necessarily understand the overall business of what we do. And so some of them could be a soybean breeder that's focused on breeding techniques. And so maybe him or hers focus is on breeding, and yet they don't understand what that impact could be when it's time for commercial launch. And so having that overall business acumen of what we need in industry, we try to do our best in help building that awareness. I want to quickly talk about the structure of the university mentoring program. And so this is a volunteer-based initiative. And so each university is assigned a Bayer core lead who oversees and interacts with the team of Bayer mentors. We also have a university liaison who is instrumental in the success of the program, who helps interface with the university mentees. And so, as you can see on the slide, the University of Nebraska core leads are myself, Pat, and Aaron. And then we partner closely with Hawaii, who is the university liaison. And so really ensuring that we've got those lines of communication open really is going to help continue for the program to be as successful as it has been. So on this last slide, you can see as our initiative covers multiple regions and across numerous universities. And so looking back, the program started in 2018 at the University of Missouri. And the concept emerged from a discussion that happened between a professor at the University of Missouri and a couple of my Bayer colleagues. And they were discussing talent development. And the professor said, I can prepare students for academic roles all day. I'm uncertain about what you guys need in industry and what skill sets needed for them to be successful. And so the idea then came to fruition that we would partner a postdoc or graduate student with a industry team member. And then that industry team member, obviously, as I've mentioned, would provide mentorship and really advice and guidance throughout the course, throughout their relationship, but to provide them what we're looking for in these positions and really what skill sets they need. And obviously, we've seen some potential growth. And so in 2022, we expanded our efforts in North America. And then in 23, we took the program global. And then looking ahead, we now have programs in 27 universities in North America. We've got programs with 9 universities in Latin America and 6 with universities in Europe. And so really to conclude, I know I've thrown a lot at you guys around this mentoring program, but really it's a comprehensive initiative that's designed to empower mentees, foster professional growth, and of course strengthen connections within the ag biotech industry. So happy to answer any questions at the end of this, or if not during the session at any time during the course of the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Bree. So we have had the opportunity to be a part of this program, and I will just say over the last 3 years consistently, the feedback is very, very positive from our graduate students, and the number of students that are applying for this opportunity continues to grow. Unfortunately, there's a cap, and so that should demonstrate to you just how powerful this relationship is on the mentoring. The other nice thing is the connectivity that graduate students from across the world have the opportunity to connect with peers in that. So just really powerful. Okay, next we will hear from Drew.
Good morning, everyone. Change focus a little bit, and what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm excited to be a part of this panel and discussion on education and workforce development. So just a little bit of the background that what we're focused on with Mississippi State University, and specifically our water center that's focused on the groundwater sustainability, the specific aquifer that we are irrigating out of, that's within the lower Mississippi River Basin, is being depleted. And so this center was established several years ago in collaboration with USDA ARS and split with Mississippi State University. And so our focus really is the groundwater sustainability of the lower Mississippi River Basin. And so one of those prongs that we are looking towards is extension and outreach and focused. And so we have a lot of research that we're focused on looking at efficiency increases, alternative water supply opportunities, and things that fit within our region that we can either reduce the amount of water being pumped out, being more efficient with the water that's being pumped out, or looking at alternative sources, or looking at enhancing recharge, really just getting that balance back in place. And so one of the things that we were focused on is soil moisture sensor adoption as an example. We have a lot of research looking at that's one of the best ways that we can increase efficiency. And getting that technology out to the farmer was a continuous hurdle that in adoption of any conservation practice, right? I mean, that's extension and outreach is what we've always trying to look at. And so one of the methods that we looked at was creating a Master Irrigator Program that was started several years ago out of Texas, and then grew to Oklahoma State, in Oklahoma, then into Colorado. And so a couple of years ago, we partnered with them and started talking about what that would look like. And so we created a Master Irrigator Program. And really started that about probably 4 years ago, and we're on our second year. We just completed our second year. So this morning, I'm going to talk to you about the Master Irrigator Program, the kind of the goals that we wanted to establish with that. But as we were going through any conservation practice, we really felt like there was a missing gap into understanding that technical aspect of it. Any conservation practice it needs to be adopted, but used correctly. And so there's maintenance, there's installation, there's decision making, and working within our CS, there was funds to go through EQIP to be able to give some of these supports and incentive programs to get to these practices. And even those that were participating with those practices, we'd work with those farmers, and we'd see a lot of the equipment that they purchased hanging in their shops. And so getting those equipment out there and into the field, but used correctly. My colleagues and I in the center, a lot of this is hardware. And so what this program, what we say is a lot of it is hardware, but this program really focuses on the software. So the mentality, the knowledge gain that we can increase with this program. So I'm going to go run through a little bit of highlights, if I can. Oh, sorry, the big green one. So the structure of this program and what we really wanted to focus on, and some of the programs that I mentioned earlier that were established before us, set a minimum requirement. And we really wanted to emphasize the idea that this was going to be a certificate program, to try to maintain a level that was that minimum requirement, but also that can be duplicated, but also that is that is meaningful in several aspects. And so whether that be for working within RCS, if they complete this course, then that means something, that they can get value added to that. But also a standard that we wanted to create, not only within our state, but as we moved across other states. We thought a certificate program and creating some standards within this program was very important to make sure we were covering the correct topics that crossed multiple states, but at the same time really make it regionally focused, so we can focus on the regional issues, the regional operational systems that targeted those audiences. And so it's a 24-hour, and our course I think is different from the other ones that exist currently, which is a hybrid. And so a participant will enroll in our course, and they're going to go through online modules. And so we have 8 online modules that are prerequisites, and then they come to our hands-on program. And our target audience really started out as Mississippi growers, trying to help give them that technical experience, that increase that technical capacity of understanding how to use these practices and use them correctly, because that's when we feel like if they understand how to use them and use them correctly, then past that NRCS incentive program, once it expires, they're going to keep using it because they saw that value in those practices. And so our curriculum focus is on irrigation water management, soil water dynamics, understanding crop water use. Why, if I keep using sensors as an example, but if we're saying that we can use these soil moisture sensors to schedule, understanding the crop side of that, the agronomics, the economics, and then we also talk a lot about water governance and policy that goes within that. There's several studies that we've done within the center and other places that if they understand that there's a water problem, they're up to 30% or more likely to do a conservation practice. So really understanding the water system, the groundwater hydrology is very important, and so we've incorporated that into the program. Yeah, like I mentioned, it's in our program specifically is a hybrid approach. So we have online modules that they go through on their own at their own pace, and that's worked really well for us with the growers. We have an advisory group that helped. We walked through some of these, setting up the curriculum, but also the structure, and we asked them. We're trying to maintain at least a 24-hour program. What can you give us? How many hours can you give us in person? And they really pushed if we could do some kind of online portion of it. But it really helped us as far as we gave them a pretty good window to be able to enroll and then complete these online modules. So that whole time, from a marketing and promotion standpoint, the moment that they decide that I'm interested in this program, they can click on it, and then there's action that they can take. They can immediately enroll and start taking the courses, but at the same time, we're opening that up for about 3 months. And so we have a really good opportunity for marketing and promotion that we're pushing this. And then we have a deadline for them to complete that, and then they come into an in-person training. And then once they do that, they complete their requirements that we have and get that certificate from that standard we're trying to maintain. And then we have continuous learning opportunities. We're engaging them after the program, years after program. We're asking them what they're doing. Have they talked to others? Or they incorporated certain practices on their farm? And one of the things, that I mentioned earlier, that the target really was growers and helping tackle one of those hurdles that we have, those barriers from adoption and that technical assistance and technical, being able to understand the hands-on, the specifics with that. But one of the things we saw over the last couple of years that was somewhat surprising to me. But so it's kind of the breakdown of the participants. We had, this is again 2 years, we have 41% of those are farmers. So producers, farmers, farm managers, they make the decisions from the ownership standpoint on the farm. And then we have about 30% of those are going to be crop consultants. And then that's in our area, that's a big portion of a lot of the decisions that are being made on the farm. And so we're very happy to see the crop consultants come in and be a part of this. Usually, and I'm speaking on our area, entomology, bugs and weeds, a lot of their focus. And so the water side of the things is typically, they don't want to reduce any yields, so they say turn it on. And so a lot of the barriers we have is crop consultants. The farmer may call me and say, I don't think we need to irrigate, but they're arguing with their crop consultant. So we welcome all the crop consultants to be able to come in and dive a lot into that. And so one of the other things that the surprising part, I think, was the students. So about 15% either extension educators and graduate students. And specifically this last year, we had a lot of graduate students that decided to enroll. And that was more of an organic, just talking to us, asking if they could sit in, and absolutely. And so we had some graduate students of other programs. I've had entomology students just last week call me that went through the program and say, I'm managing my plots and I've never really thought about when to irrigate or how often I should be irrigating. Can you help me install some soil moisture sensors or look at this program to see if my uniformity can be increased? And so those are great conversations that, we're so focused on adoption from our growers and out into the landscape and our farmers. And I've got graduate students that are just a plot away that are not understanding some of these things. So that was great. And then ag retailers. And so one of the other things that we see with growers is a service. And if something's lacking in service or they can't handle it themselves, that they're real quick to move on to something if it's not working correctly. And so trying to get those retailers in there. And one of the things that we've started working at with the graduate students that we started having increase is the Mississippi State and our dean of the college called me up and we started talking about ways we could incorporate that. And so they're going to work with us on getting actually credit hours to our undergrad and graduate students to participate in this program. We haven't finalized those details. Maybe there's some additional things we can add to it, but creating the aspect of this certificate program, incorporating some of the graduate students that may not have thought a lot about some of these practices that's not inside, especially grad students. You really get focused on your world and your research, and so expanding some of that has been really great, and just great conversations. It's cut off on this, but I hope you can see that the age. This is the age breakup and over those 2 years, and I thought this was amazing. It's about, I can't remember the percentage, high percentage of this, that's the tall bars under 40. So that is percentage. So 40% are in their 20s that are participating in our program. So really young group of growers that started, the grad students going to bring some of that down, but really even when we break it up with just the specific growers, it's around 35 is the age. And so that was great to see. And one of the comments, we have evaluations and all the extension type of things that we need to do from evaluation standpoint, and we have open-ended comments too. And one of the things that was continuous that I saw as a trend specifically from our younger growers was connecting with other growers. And I that's always very valuable when you bring somebody in a training program, is that connection and bridging that. And I think it's interesting too. We have the fathers and the grandfathers that have that network that they've developed. But I got a sense going through this the last couple of years that those 30-year-olds that are coming to our program really haven't developed that. And so that was one thing that they continuously talked to personally about, but also wrote down in our evaluations, is being able to connect and see some of the other growers that have been doing certain practices for a long time, but also other growers their age that they're able to connect. And so that was one neat opportunity that I think that we have within this program, and really creating that cross-sector collaboration. Not only the young growers creating a network amongst themselves, which I think is very important from a successful, moving in and adopting and utilizing conservation practices and having that network, but also they can talk to the groundwater conservation district that makes policy, and they connect to them. They can connect to retailers that are selling some of these services, or they can connect to the other consultants that are out there. So they're creating that cross-sector collaboration, but that age group crossing over, it was very important. The youth engagement, that's something that was our initial goal, was creating this curriculum specifically for the growers. But I think we're developing something within this program that may be a side advantage between the youth, from the standpoint of undergrads and graduates, but also our younger growers. And then our regional impact. And so what we're aiming for specifically for Mississippi Master Irrigator Program is to provide technical assistance and education to that sector. But at the same time, we share an aquifer specifically in our region with Arkansas, with Missouri, and with Louisiana. So we're expanding into those states as well, having crossover curriculum that's very applicable within the states, but also curriculum that's going to be in Nebraska. A lot of things that we're working through in other states that have developed or developing a program. There's a lot of basics that are going to be applicable in any state, and then there's very specific regional areas of that curriculum that we can focus on. So one of the areas we're looking at is creating this multi-state collaboration, and with partners with the Irrigation Consortium and Amy and all the work that they were doing. Here's a map that shows of who's active in other states. It's really expanding. Conversations are going amongst these other universities to be able to create a Master Irrigator program within the state, and I think that's amazing. And creating a certificate program or a standard that has base level information that needs to be covered, but at the same time tailoring it to regional or state specific problems I think is very important, and that's one thing we're moving towards in creating this. And I think the certificate and the standards that we try to maintain as we help develop other programs across the country. I mentioned we were the third or fourth, and so all the help that the other states that gave us from a curriculum development standpoint, evaluations, what worked, what didn't work, but at the same time we also tailored ours specific to our problems, our issues, but also the way we wanted to structure our program. And so look forward to seeing the continued growth to other states, and then within our state as well. I will happy to answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Drew. I think that was a wonderful example of thinking about upskilling educational opportunities, and then creatively about what exists with micro-credentials and how you can scaffold those micro-credentials on to have cross-disciplinary expertise, and really our students are learning from a holistic standpoint. So thanks, Drew, for that. Next, we'll have Derek.
Good. Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you all for being here this morning and being part of this discussion. Really have enjoyed visiting with a lot of you this week. So I decided to limit myself to 3 slides. We're going to see how that goes this morning. If we really want to make progress on food security and water security, we need to be thinking about this topic of workforce development. Capacity development is mission critical. I wanted to put together a slide that provides one way to think about the teaching or educational programs that we have. I put this together for my specific academic unit for a different meeting, but I thought it would work equally well here. So in the branches of the tree, I have several different of our teaching programs, our more formal programs. I included extension in here, and these micro-credentials that we'll talk more about. Hopefully, our educational programs are something of a regenerative place that's flourishing and growing. More specifically, I wanted to make this slide to give us something to talk about in terms of the world of changes that we live in. There's been more disruptions in 2025 than 2024, right? And the last 5 years, much more than the previous 5 years. So what does that look like? And for those of us who are focused on education, there's budget constraints, but also the skills in the workforce that are needed are changing, right? The new generation is changing. And I thought this gives us a way to think about the canopy of our tree is going to look different. And let's be proactive to make it look different. Some branches might be trimmed off, and that's okay. We're going to choose some things to focus on. We might have to graft in some branches with very new ideas that are different ways of doing things, and maybe those will take off and really grow. But that takes a lot of courage and wisdom to really be innovators and push change forward instead of waiting to be reactive. And the way we do that is with a strong community. So we've really been talking a lot about the importance of community and networking in times of change, and part of that idea of resilience and being agile. So what does that look like? So in an education community, we have instructors and students, right? But we also have a lot of university leadership that we coordinate with. We have a lot of alumni in all different places that give us really good feedback. Our industry partners, I really appreciate Bree's presentation and that connection and that community between the academic programs and where the students will end up. Anyway, having those relationships help us as educators be better in the loop on what's going on and faster in responding to those needs. Also, I really appreciated Demetrius's comments on the wide range of educational pathways there are. There isn't just one linear pathway, and our traditional role model in the university of a student stopping high school, living 4 years on campus, and then starting a job, that's a decreasing population of students. We'll keep providing that, but we need to think about who are the new types of learners that we're serving. One of the things that we hear from our employers is we know we want to hire the right student for the job who has the right degree, but also we have a lot of existing employees who need professional development. Things are changing so fast. I couldn't hire an employee with a degree I wanted. I work in a small town and I need to grow the local talent that I have here. What does that look like? So let's go to the next slide. Or I guess I've got it here. There we go. So thanks to Crystal Powers for tipping me off on some of these quotes. This is highlighting the need for professional development, or what we call upskilling, for people on the job. The first two statistics are global. Workers can expect that 2/5 of their existing skill sets will be transformed or outdated over the next 5-year period. Another study, only 4% of employees are learning new skills in their first 2 years on the job. So this is some hard data that underscores the need for continuing education for upskilling. So that's something we've been trying to put a lot of thought into. What does that look like? This is a different group of learners than what we're used to. How can we adapt to that? Okay. So that leads us to the topic of micro-credentials. So instead of long degrees, what are bite-size or micro opportunities for learning? And our culture is fast-paced and likes bite-sized things anyway. If you've talked to high school students lately, the attention span keeps getting shorter, right? And that's not necessarily good or bad, but we need to adapt to it. We need to account for it. So micro-credentials are one way to do that. The certificates on the bottom of the slide are an example I'm going to start with. So we identified a need where, especially since COVID, more high school graduates are hesitant to commit to a 4-year degree and take on a lot of debt. And maybe in some of our rural areas here in Nebraska, they have summer jobs working for an irrigation manufacturer, and like, man, I can work full time and get a salary today instead of all of the uncertainty. But they would really benefit from some education. We have a 18 credit hour certificate at the undergraduate level that's fully online and will be available to students who have graduated high school and are in the workforce, or who have finished a 2-year degree but want a little bit more depth with junior and senior level classes. And that's just at the final stage of approval. We're looking forward to implementing that. The one that's a little more challenging for us is the smaller bites that we call badges or online modules. One of my challenges is I think, oh, we've got all this great topic on these subject areas, We just need to translate it into the right format, and that turns out to be a pretty big job to get existing course content to a bite-sized format to a really fast-paced learner in the format that they're expecting for online programs. One thing I've discovered, though, learning from working with Tiffany and Santosh, is that that process is becoming a lot easier, maybe an order of magnitude easier than it was a year or two ago, using AI to develop scripts, using AI to develop a voice audio with that script, using tools like Canva to put together an attractive video in a very short time. So I'm really excited about getting into this space. I'm also excited that with these fully online programs, there's some potential for scaling that could be useful here in Nebraska, across the country, international development. Maybe it could be plugged into a program like Master Irrigators, and we already have some online content. Yesterday there was a discussion about Water for Food Future and what are the needs there. Perhaps these online components could be a part of that as well. So that's some of the things that we're up to. Thank you for your attention. And by the way, if you're interested, we're always looking for people to partner with as we build out these products.
Thank you, Derek. Just a great example, too, of thinking about the continuum of the learner and what's needed throughout that progression, and then also how your department is being proactive and thinking about the future of workforce development. So thanks for that. And then our final presenter will be Dave.
Thanks, everybody, for coming today. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here on the panel. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program, which I'm part of the staff on that. The program was given to us by a gentleman, Paul Engler. Our mission is to embolden people in the courageous pursuit of their purpose through the art and practice of entrepreneurship. Who we're looking for is, there's about 4 different aspects of this that I'd like to talk to you this morning about. The first one is mindset. We look for the entrepreneur mindset, the person who is a servant leader. That's kind of what we're looking for with people who want to help others. A problem solver, somebody who likes to think about what could be better in our society. Emotional intelligence, kind of a high level of emotional intelligence to be able to run a team. And then people who tell you that you can't do something. And then watch. So we want to attract those people who have been told they can't do something, because as you know, as an entrepreneur, it's one of those things that you really then want to do all the more. Our founder, Paul Engler, always tested us, the instructors. He wanted to know, can you really teach entrepreneurship, or is it innately in the person as they were born, and it's part of their heredity? Well, we tried to prove him wrong, and I think we can prove him wrong, because we think about this mindset and then process. So you can teach process, and so we teach the steps that you need to do. So once you've got a problem that you're trying to solve, we try to think about what are the steps you need to do to get a business up and running. And it really doesn't matter what the business is. Some of the same steps are all true. Startup costs, estimating some of your expenses and your profitability, knowing your market, understanding customer discovery, doing all those things are true for almost any business that you want to do. So if we can get the right mindset, if we can teach mindset and get students into that aspect, and if we can teach process, now we've got an entrepreneur that can start making a difference in the world. The other side of this is, how do you know whether a business is successful or not? And so we think about the businesses as it's 2 different parts. And I teach a lot of business plan writing, but in that, there's 2 parts of a business. One is there a market? Are other people out there that would be interested in buying or engaging with the product or service that you're interested in. And that goes back to customer discovery, competitor discovery, understanding the market, understanding the industry as a whole, and then doing your due diligence on that. Then the other side of it is, can I make money? And I always tell students, I can make money, but do I make enough that I would actually do this particular type of business, whether it be a service-based or a product-based business? And so those are the two things we think about there. In our, oh, can I go? This is the reason, this slide here tells it all for us. This is our passion. This is the reason we're here in our program, the Engler program. It's because of these guys right here, these students of ours. They are amazing. They are starting companies while still going to school, which to me, Tiffany, still just blows my mind that a student is still willing to do that. And they're doing it more and more. And to Tiffany's point earlier, they want to start businesses so they don't have to take a job. Music to our ears, because that's what we're looking for, is somebody who doesn't take a job but actually creates jobs and tries to find ways to have other people employed, increasing the economy and increasing our engagement in community. So thank you very much again, and if you got any questions, let me know, and I'll turn it back over to Tiffany.
Well, thanks, Dave. One of the highlights of this program is that even if a student's not going to go out and start a business, they're going to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that that is incredibly important as we look to the future. Having said that, this program has been very successful. At the 10-year mark, over $175 million had been generated from the startups of our students. And note that it takes about 4 years to start a program. So that was really over about 6 years. Many of those students are now graduates that have started business here in the state of Nebraska, and so it's helping with the economic growth and vitality. And then I would also point out that we had the opportunity to work on a really exciting and impactful education program with Rwanda. And all of the students that were here from Rwanda, which we had 200 of them, and they all worked their way through the Engler program, they left having business plans ready to go. Many of them had the opportunity to make some connections with Water for Food, the institute here. And so just shows the power of what it's able to do on a global front also when we think about this. So I think you have now heard enough about the expertise of our panelists, and we've probably talked enough. And so we're going to open it up now. I'm going to circulate with a microphone, and I'll take any questions, and then we can have the panelists respond to those questions.
First, let me say thank you for all that you do. Incredibly impressive work across the panel. The engagement access, internationally as well as nationally, it seems to be sourced in a person who has a dream or a vision or a reason for trying to establish something entrepreneurially. You just mentioned that you're looking for a person who thinks that way. And we work in third world country in Kenya, and particularly with orphan children who have very little exposure to anybody who thinks that way. They think from a begging perspective. I need someone to give me something. Is there a connectivity that you see that can be transferred, at least in terms of the way that you train people to think? And I'm not really sure what kind of experiences I can even offer young people. I've been working there for 20 years with basically the same population of children. We've started some businesses. We do have some sustainability going on, but orphan populations, you get new crop every year, just like you get graduates and you get people coming out of foster care systems. The issue on the table for me is, how do I engage entrepreneurial thinking at an age, maybe 15, 16, 17 years of age, so that by 18, when they age out, there's something that they have thought through, at least to begin.
That's an interesting group of people that you're working with, and I think there's a lot of potential with that group. And I always thinking about problems that are in your area, and I know there might be several of them, but think about the problems and how you can solve them, as well as thinking about that servant leader, that person who really tries to help other people get ahead or get forward in their life, and giving them the chance to do that, and giving them opportunity. One thing that we do in our program, many times students have been students for so many years, since kindergarten, they have never made their own decisions. So we just allow students to decide on their own, and we hope they fail. And we hope and we call failure learning. So we hope they're learning as they fail, and we want them to do that. So that, to us, is probably the best teacher of all.
I'll just jump in, and we are doing projects domestically as well as internationally, in Rwanda in particular. The approach that we've taken is, don't look at it as, like you just mentioned, Dave, we make the problems, we present solutions before we look at the problems and the challenges first. And what we've done from a fresh harvest and a fresh hire point of view is we tried to meet the individuals where they're at on their zip code, meaning like what are they dealing with on a holistic approach to life. And how do you get them to start looking at life as a whole, and then what can we contribute from a fresh harvest, fresh hire, from a holistic point of view, to not only give them careers, but also give them that holistic wraparound approach on how to survive life, but how to integrate their learnings, whether it's culturally or in their communities. How do they give that back into making an impact across the board? So, and like we mentioned before, we've implemented scholarships in Rwanda as part of the Agripreneurship Approach Academy to get them that influence, but also give them that journey earlier in life, from a high school pathway on down to a career, whether it be college or civilian.
Thank you. Okay, our next question.
Thank you. Excellent panel. I have a lot of questions, but one question for Bree. What was the motivation for Bayer to do this mentoring program, and how can this be transferred to other companies? Like, how can we convince other companies? I don't know if you know of any other companies that do that on this scale.
Great question. And so, as I mentioned, it started in the discussion with the University of Missouri, but really, it was needed, right? We get a lot of new hires within our organization that, similar to kind of what they've all been saying, are not confident in, speaking with even senior leaders, even working their way through those interview processes. And so we had decided as a company that we really wanted to focus in on some of those new hires and also provide some of that development for our most senior professionals. How other industry partners can implement the same thing, I think is a great question. I don't know. I think Corteva, I don't know if there's anybody from Corteva in the room. I think they offer a similar program. But I know that our group is happy to talk with anybody to kind of help get that program started at another industry partner. I know it's not like it's a confidential business matter of Bayer. So I'm willing to at least talk with you separately outside of the session and help answer any of those questions, but also make some introductions for you. But we're happy to think about ways that we can expand this, because I think it's only going to be beneficial for everybody involved, other industry partners and students, to continue to build their overall business acumen and establish that professional career.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. Now, I have a similar question, but different from what this guy, I don't know him, next to me asked. mine is like you have a group of people, you find that the elderly people pick up the entrepreneurship. The younger people, they don't even know nothing about participating and become entrepreneurs. How can one try to help them see something?
I was going to say the biggest thing that I've learned is this younger generation, they are entrepreneurs. I'm trying to encourage them to be agripreneurs because a lot of them are influencers on social media. So they're business oriented, business minded. How do we attract them into agriculture with that same passion, with that same think through? So we've developed online. So all of our curriculum is online. And it's also, we have VR, AR type settings as well. So they can learn in the gaming type aspects, but also the micro credentials are very important. Their attention span are very short, like we mentioned. So how can they get quick education so they can start making money today? With that mentality, they are entrepreneurs. We just have to give them that pathway to harness their power.
I just might add, 30 to 40 is where people start really thinking about what is my next stage in life and how can I maybe think about a business, because I'm getting mid-career and it's time for me to, if I'm going to do something unique and innovative, that might be the time to do it. So that's why our alums are so important to us, and we're active with our alums. We ask them, we provide programming for our alums. We ask them to come interact with our students. We don't ask them for money. We never ask them for money. And we don't wait for the College of Agriculture to help us figure out who our alums are. We know who they are. They're important to us because when they get to be 30 or 40 years old, they're going to want to start companies, and we're going to try to be that source for them to get that started for them and to help them. So that's another way of thinking about it.
I think I would just add to that too. I think it's a little bit about, when we're trying to target youth, expanding what the definition means to be an entrepreneur also, because I think a lot of times there's a fairly narrow definition and many don't see that they belong in that space. More and more high schools now are also launching entrepreneurship platforms, right? And so then how do we create that continuum between the K through 12 school system as well as into higher education, or what are those other opportunities for them to connect, such as Demetrius's platform that he has. Okay, what other questions? Oh, sure.
My question would be more specific to Drew with your Master Irrigator Program. When a person achieves completion of the program, certified in some way, is there a carrot or a stick that would require your irrigators to achieve that level? And the second question would be, what do you do with those people after they've completed the course the first time, 2, 4, 10 years out in the future?
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Good questions. And so the first one is the carrot and the stick. And right now we are the carrot is the experience and the knowledge gain and the connection. And what we've been working on, what I've been working on with our, specifically one example would be our state NRCS, state conservationist, is to work with them to try to create incentive programs, incentive programs that if we have a completion of the program, a certificate that was obtained, then they are now eligible for priority rankings to go through an EQIP program. Other states have that. I believe Texas, Colorado, and Oklahoma are set up that way. And so again, that's combining the financial incentives to technical training, which, the two most the biggest, largest barrier to adoption of most conservation practices are those two things. And if we can match money incentive programs with technical training, to me, that's the perfect marriage with that. And so in our state, in Mississippi, it's not currently a carrot that goes along with that. Continuing to work through that, NRCS is a very supportive of our program financially. That it was a grant that actually started this through NRCS, and so and then one of the things that turned into what we've done in the micro and upskilling was they started. We did the first program. One of the NRCS state engineer came to the program and said, we need all of our NRCS consultants to come, or the state offices, or the county offices and other field personnel. And so we created an off-spin of it just specifically for our NRCS. So the relationship's there. It's kind of molding into other areas, like we mentioned with the graduate students in RCS. But I think going back to that's where we're hoping to get is some carrots that go along with that. Our state MD, or the DEQ, requires permits for all groundwater users to go through. And one of the things I'm working with them on is creating not only an advertisement to go to this program for those that get permit holders, but they're required to check a box that they'll do a certain amount of water conservation practices when they go get in their groundwater permit. And so they are going to put completing the Mississippi Master Irrigator Program on their permit as an option to be able to do that. Are they doing a conservation practice by attending this? No, and I've always argued, a soil moisture sensor doesn't save a drop of water, but using it and correctly is what saves the water. And so they understand the importance of that education. So that's where we're at as far as trying to create incentives to do that. I think it's very important. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
I know your program's new, but have you thought about
follow-up?
Yes. Education.
So we tried to stay engaged. We have 2 graduating classes. We have followed up after 1 year, after the first growing season, with our first class, and we engaged them and asked them a certain amount of questions. What did you do on your farm? After they leave the program, we asked them what they thought, what was their intentions, what were their knowledge gain type of questions, or what they intend to do, and then we asked them what they actually did do after that first season, and we'll continue to do that. And we're also trying to do, and we'll keep doing that, follow-ups to see what they're actually engaging in, but also the other areas where they've connected to other growers and we're bringing back some of our graduates to the program so that they can talk as a panel to the newest class, but really trying to create a network between the graduates that go through there so they can connect to each other and not just within that one class, but multiple classes, trying to connect that. Because I think networks that they can work together, ask questions to each other, is going to be important as they go forward.
Thanks, Drew. Next question.
Thank you to all the panelists. I have a question. It might be directed towards Derek, but anybody could answer. With micro-credentialing, I think, like Drew was just talking about evaluations, I think the branch of how we do evaluations is going to have to shift radically. So when people have badges, how do you foresee the evaluations changing in order to know when people have learned a thing, that they've really learned it in a way that is going to achieve the aim of whatever it is you're trying to teach? And what opportunities do you see actually for sort of crowdsourcing or understanding the storytelling that we can do that goes with that, so that the value of this new approach kind of, or even engaging the people that do this with these new learners, how can we harness them as influencers to spread the word?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Assessment is tricky for micro-credentials, and I'm thankful that they're not officially credit-based courses for the university, because we'd be under a lot more scrutiny. It's a little bit more participation, and you get the credit for the amount of effort put in. Within that, we know that experiential learning is important. As attention spans shrink, that's even more important. And I think in the area of online courses, we're developing more and more skills of having more frequent interruptions in the content delivery. And then whether that's multiple choice or ranking a list of answers or entering a forum with the other students, I think those tools are more and more important, and we're getting better at how to account for that to make sure they complete those steps before they move forward. And a little bit less on, we're going to make sure they watch a 30-minute video. So that's part of it. Another thing to drive engagement, I've been using ChatGPT more, and the how many of you use ChatGPT? Okay, so I'm a teacher, but I still have a lot to learn, and I've fallen in love with ChatGPT. It knows right where I'm at. If I ask it a detailed irrigation question, it gives me a very concise answer with highly technical vocabulary. And when I get stuck on coding and ask for help, it thinks, this guy's a student. And it gives me very long answers and explains things very thoroughly, and it knows right where I'm at. Anyway, we want to build that into our education programs more and more. So we've developed a customized version of GPT specifically for irrigation, and essentially we give it a knowledge base with really credible materials. And so when it answers the person using the tool, it preferences the knowledge base that we've given it, and then only if there's not good material there, it'll take its broad information from the web. But we've been using that for students, had some good feedback from producers, and I think that can be really transformative. When I do that compared to a Google search and reading documents, I learn about 10 times faster. And I think as we embed these into our online programs, that'll foster the learning process, and maybe there's a way we can capture that. And I haven't thought through the storytelling yet, but we've been thinking about what are the ways we can do our own agent with a ChatGPT in the background so we can collect the data, and there'd be a lot of benefits to collecting the data, but that would certainly be one of them. What are the good stories in there that we want to keep our eye out for? So.
Thanks, Derek. At the University of Nebraska, we've thought very intentionally about how we think about what we are calling digital badges. So digital badges for us is non-credit. Certificates are micro-credentials that are credit-bearing and awarded by the university. And so you're exactly right. When you're developing digital badges, like what does that structure look like? How are you assessing learner outcomes related to that? And so all of our digital badges have 3 components to it that underlie the digital badge specifically. And so the first one is acquisition of new information, new knowledge. The second of that is application of that within its context and being able to demonstrate that. And then the third part is the reflecting of the learning related to that. And so that's how we've tried to approach it. Now, one of the things that we're eager to do, and it's a call to those that are sitting around this room, we'd really like to be able to partner more with industry and employers to co-brand these digital badges if they have application on the upskill part or adding to a credential that one of our undergraduate or graduate students has. So yeah. Okay, next question. I'm going to go up there, then I'll come back, okay? Oh, okay, perfect. Next question.
So have you thought through the lack of jobs in rural communities? So, we just keep seeing, I'm in Texas, huge brain drain going from west into the east part of the state. And have you thought through how to address, there's a lot of remote jobs, there's things like that, of how do you encourage some of these younger people to stay in these? I understand why they're leaving, but there are still people that want to stay, but there's no job for them, or it's become more I don't know, people don't want their employees to work remotely anymore. And it feels like remote jobs could be such a benefit to our rural communities if people would allow that to happen. So I'm just curious if any of you thought that through.
This is what I think about with rural communities: daycare and housing. Problems to solve, right, in a rural community is the daycare issue and housing. Our students want to go back to small communities to live and to raise their families and to have that environment and that community. They want it, but they can't because there's no place for them to live. and there's not enough resources for them for daycare. So it's a simple answer, but that's the one I've got. I don't see anybody else.
I was going to say, we've been implementing not only in the community, but how do we engage more individuals to come to that community to get the rural jobs. So we've been looking at how do we engage with out-of-state universities and their workforce and give them opportunities from an internship to come to a Nebraska and maybe a rural town that has a site like F.A.R.M and all that we can funnel a continual pipeline of talent year after year, but also engage individuals to move into those communities. That's our approach that we've been taking over the last year and a half.
All right, next question. You can ask a second question, yeah. Absolutely.
The dialogue in this room is so valuable. I'm a local pastor for the last 40 years in this state of Texas. I went on a mission trip 20 years ago and met these young people that I mentioned. Being orphans, they only know Dad, Wayne, and Mama Joe. So we've been on subsistence, survival, for most of their first 18 years. But then when they graduated out, we started initiatives that we call Business as Ministry and Life on Life. It's a 3-year curriculum of growth, character building. But at Business as Ministry follows Life on Life. Once we know you have character, then you can run a business, meaning you'll be consistent. You'll show up and open your shop or whatever. Okay, our challenge is spreading the opportunity for people to hear what we do. Because we took the book of Habakkuk, excuse me for the reference, but chapter 2 says, write a vision and make it plain on tablets of stone so that those who read it can run with it. And I'm a herald. I take what they write. I've collected 7 or 8 business proposals in the last year that have been thought beautifully through ChatGPT. These kids use, the internet is amazing. So our kids are online, they have platforms of their own, they have digital ID. They're teaching me everything I know about the internet. And so we've started several businesses. One of them is a successful gaming center. It's the only place kids can go play PS5 games in Kitengela. That's run by a former orphan child who is now 25 and he's hired 4 people. And so I see that what you are telling me works. How do I, as an old man, because this is my first time coming to a conference like this. I've never been in a room with this kind of brain power. Normally I'm around a bunch of guys arguing about the Bible, you know what I mean? But this is practical, applicational wisdom. And so I've got proposals, and I tell them I'm going to give this to people who will look at it and maybe invest in you. And I'm thinking, does that fly in academia? Would universities be open to maybe sponsoring a business? Just one university, one business. I'm not trying to make them open a whole new wing of the educational program. But I'm an academician prior to being a pastor, so I know this environment is incredible. So thank you for, first of all, refreshing me. But I don't know if I've even asked a question.
I'd like to talk to you after this time, because I think we could probably enjoy each other a lot and get something done.
Thanks for... Okay, last question right here.
Honestly, he is addressing what I am as well. The thing I was asking, that the elderly people take business more than the younger people, it's in the third world where they don't see anything about engaging themselves. We are into doing gardens and irrigation out there. Elderly people go there, but the young people don't. So this is the same thing. You know, I don't know why I said close to this man.
Well, I think the two of you are going to go have lunch with Dave Lamb, okay? Very good, very good. So as we close out the panel, I just like each of our panelists. We've talked some about the real technical side of things. We've also ventured into discussions around entrepreneurship. When we think a lot more about those career-ready skills, right? I think you mentioned soft skills. I like to call them career-ready skills and those types of things. What would each of you say is one area that we should be focused on as we're preparing the future generation of change makers?
I would say the soft skills, like we talked about before, but more into the AI, data analysts, data scientists, software engineering type segments.
And I mean, I would agree with Demetrius, but I'd also say that for Bayer's perspective, we can find the talent. I'm not worried about finding the best data scientist or the best soybean breeder. What we are more focused on really is, again, as I mentioned, is those essential soft skills. There are a lot of students, if we can get them training in leadership skills, global mindsets, strategic mindsets. Communication, of course, is always key, but really having an overall understanding, depending on which industry that you sit in, is from start to finish, right? Like, we've got a product, we've got a proof of concept that we're interested in, and bringing that proof of concept to fruition to have a global commercial product. There's a lot of students that don't understand how that process works. They don't understand the regulatory requirements and legwork that goes into bringing a product to market. So having that overall global mindset is something that's really also impactful and really beneficial for industry hires.
So yeah, that's a great question, and as my mind's listening to, or as my mind's thinking is listening to all these different conversations, and you know what I maybe thought before I was going to say that, but as we went through all this, I think one thing that so from an extension standpoint, we always say, I don't know if it's a joke, but it's that we're trying to get somebody to do something differently, and the reason they keep doing it is because their dad did it and their grandfather did it and before that, and so they where they do it is because they've always done it, and then introspectively I'm sitting there thinking through, we're doing a lot of things the same way because they did it before me and then before them, and so from a standpoint of education, I think we need to it's just for me specifically was just because we've always had these field days or just because we've always had these programs and we expect everybody to show up, we need to change as far as how we're going to get that information out, whether that's targeting a different generation or creating different opportunities. I think all the conversation of the rural development and reaching other people or some of the young folks that y'all talked about is a lot of it's opportunity, and when we have a lot of structure that we've always done it a certain way, it's hard to see that opportunity for others. And so I think to answer specifically, I think we need to continuing to change, but look at ways where we can not have the standard that we want to make sure we're meeting from an education standpoint, but it could look a lot different as we go forward.
I guess I would mention two things. The first one would be AI, and I know there's a lot of skeptics of AI, but it's really valuable. It's not going away, and it has problems, and we need to manage those problems, but overall, whatever your line of work is, if you can take advantage of that, that really helps. And then the second thing would be agility, and it's a little hard to illustrate agility, but maybe part of it is, what does success look like? I think I grew up thinking that success looks like getting somewhere, where the goal is stationary or static, but maybe it's more helpful to think of success being able to respond to your environment. and the things around you are going to change more all the time. And if you're able to respond and adapt, that's a successful career trajectory. Maybe it doesn't look like a linear career ladder. Maybe it looks like a jungle gym where those job transitions are very unpredictable, but they can still be very rewarding and fulfilling as you adapt to the needs around you.
Tiffany, I think it's finance. It's understanding if you can make money or not increases confidence exponentially. If you don't know that, or if you just try to avoid it, then you don't understand the business or the problem that you're trying to solve, even if there's a good solution, because part of the solution is the financial part of it. And so understanding that and having a good sense of what a balance sheet looks like, what a cash flow statement looks like, what an income statement looks like, and being able to read it is, to me, that's essential.
Okay, great. Well, please join me in thanking our panelists today.